Welcome to my channel, where OP gets a preview of his own demise. Our next Reddit post is from a user. It's a TV that showed my demise before it happened, so I was homesick from work, so I decided to watch some TV. It was one of those cable channels that just shows reruns of other people's lives. You know which ones I mean? Where you can see their day-to-day activities, where they go, what they do, etc. Like a reality show, but with actual people instead of actors. Anyways, it was showing this family that lived in an apartment complex in another city. It was a nice enough place, well kept up, everything. I recognized the apartment complex because it was very similar to the one that I lived in. It was showing the lady of the house making dinner, and the living room was visible in the background. There was a couch and 2 armchairs. She was sitting in the chair to the right from my point of view, and the living room door was open. It was showing her talking to someone off camera. And then suddenly there was a bright flash and a loud bang. It's like if someone had slammed the front door shut. So now she's looking at the door and she goes into the kitchen to get something. The screen was still on, but it wasn't showing anything. It was just black with static. Maybe their filming equipment was having issues or something. Then after a few seconds, it switches back to the living room. Now she's sitting in her chair again, and the door is closed. And then I see myself walking into the room. It was obviously supposed to be the husband coming home, you know, since they showed him earlier getting into his car to come home from work. But it's weird that I saw myself doing it instead. I don't know. I could have sworn that I didn't leave the house that day. I checked on my phone and confirmed that I never left my apartment. So it was really strange seeing myself walk into this other apartment. Then I sat down in the armchair to the left of the woman on the couch. Again, this was not my apartment, but I swear I had never been there before. Yet somehow I knew where the remote control was, and I started flipping through the channels. The woman on the couch was still there, and she started talking to me, but I didn't respond. I think I tried to speak, but no sound came out. Then I slowly turned my head to look at the woman on the couch. The screen went black, and the audio was cut out. The only thing that was audible was the sound of the television, and I could hear the woman scream, and then the picture returned to normal. She was asking me why I was just staring at her like that, and I told her that I didn't know. Then she asks if I was watching the TV like I was actually paying attention or something. Then the screen went off again and I heard screaming in the background. I don't remember what I said or did after that because I was freaked out. Tried changing the channel but nothing came through except for static. Thought maybe it was a problem with my TV reception, so I tried turning it off and back on again. But it was definitely not a problem with my TV. It was trying to show me something, but it wasn't working. I started feeling really scared at this point, like this was all really creepy and weird, so I got up to go use the bathroom. While I was gone, the TV switched back to the living room, and the woman was sitting there alone. I came back after about 2 minutes, and the TV was still on, but it was showing the outside of the apartment building. I walked over and stared at the screen, wondering what the hell was going on. Then the screen switched to another angle. The door was now open, and the woman was nowhere to be seen. And then I saw myself standing in the doorway. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I wanted to call out to whoever was controlling this, but I couldn't make a sound. I watched myself walk further into the apartment, and the last thing that I saw before I blacked out was a pair of feet. They were masculine, like a man's feet. And I distinctly remember thinking, oh my God, that's not my feet. Those are way bigger than my feet. And then I woke up. I don't remember much after that except for being terrified and trying to convince myself that it was all just a dream. I do remember my phone ringing, and my brother asking if I was okay because he received a text message that read, "Please help me. Please call 911. I called him back and he said that he was worried because he had unheard from me in a few days, and I had texted him that message. He was concerned that something happened to me. I ended up telling him about the TV and the whole ordeal, and he told me to calm down, and that I should have just changed the channel and forgot about it. He said that it was probably just a technical glitch. Well, I never did forget about it. And to this day, I haven't watched any of those types of channels ever again. Yeah, rightfully so. Yeah, our dude here, our user, never contacted the police, which was kind of dumb. But a few days later, they caught the guy who did all this. Apparently, there was a string of home invasions happening where the guy would sneak into a person's apartment while they were home and pretend to be friends with them. He would then wait until the victim fell asleep, and then he would strangle them with a pillowcase and steal whatever he could. Most of the victims were men, but he also targeted women. It was weird because all of the victims described the man in almost the exact same way, which is surprising because most people have different memories of people that they do and know all that well. So it was odd that everyone remembered this guy in the same way. Even stranger was that they all described the guy wearing the same clothes. He always wore a black jacket and a red shirt. The police finally caught up with him and found out that he was the one responsible for all the deaths. When they searched his apartment, they found multiple articles of clothing that matched the description of the clothes that the victims had seen. He was eventually convicted and sent to prison. The crazy thing was that all the news reports stated that the guy confessed to every crime except for the one in our user S apartment. That was never solved. But here's the crazy part. One of the investigators who worked on the case reached out to our user after the fact and asked him a few questions about what happened. He asked him if he recognized the man in the TV footage. When shown a lineup of photos of potential suspects, our user immediately picked the same man. He was sure that the man in the photo was the same one that he saw on the TV. But here's the kicker. Our user's apartment was on the 4th floor. And when the police investigated, they found that the perpetrator only went after apartments on the first 3 floors. None of the apartments on the 4th floor had been compromised. So yeah, this unsolved mystery has a lot of holes in it. But even if our user dreamed it all, I still say it was extremely prophetic, because this guy might have struck at the same time. Who knows? But Op was spared because he lived on the 4th floor. If you like this story, you're going to absolutely love the one that I'm going to tell you about next. Welcome to my channel where OP finds out that his parents hired a monster. Our next Reddit post is from a user. So this happened when I was 4 or 5 years old. My parents were pretty busy people, so they decided to hire a sitter from a local agency. They came to interview her and she seemed like a nice enough girl. It's kind, polite, soft-spoken, etc. When it was time for them to leave, she tucked me in bed and said goodnight. Felt weird that she left right away, but I was asleep before I knew it. Then, about 10 minutes later, I heard the house phone ringing. It was on the other side of the house, which my parents always made sure was off hook. I picked up the phone and said hello. And then I heard a man's voice say, "He's pretending to be me." Confused, I asked, "Who is?" He repeated himself louder, "He's pretending to be me," then hung up. I was confused, but figured it must have been some kind of prank call. I went back to sleep without an issue. The morning, my parents asked if everything was all right. I told them about the phone call, and they were shocked. The only people who had the number were them and their friends, none of whom would play such a cruel joke. We all decided it must have been some wrong connection. Later that day, after my parents left again, I was watching TV when I heard someone humming in the basement. I didn't think anything of it until I heard the humming stop and then footsteps coming up the stairs. I got scared and ran to hide in the closet. The door to the closet was very flimsy and wasn't properly installed, so when I pushed it shut, it only made a small gap between the door and the frame. I could see through it, and what I saw made me freeze in fear. There was a woman standing outside the closet holding a meat cleaver. I don't remember how long I stayed in that closet, but eventually I heard the woman sigh and walk away. When I finally emerged from the closet, I walked into the living room where I saw the sitter sitting on the couch watching TV with a look of pure evil on her face. I started screaming at the top of my lungs and she looked up startled. I ran out of the house and started running down the street as fast as I could. I don't remember much after that. Apparently I ended up at a neighbor's house and they called my parents. When they arrived home, they found the sitter nowhere to be seen and me sobbing in the corner. They rushed me inside, but I kept telling them to go downstairs, to go downstairs. Finally, my dad went to check, and he came upstairs pale as a ghost. He scooped me up and hugged me while asking what happened. I told him about the evil woman and the meat cleaver. He went to check again, but there was no sign of forced entry or the sitter anywhere. The police were called, and they also found nothing. We never saw the sitter again. And to this day, we have no idea what she did with that meat cleaver. As a side note, my parents took me out for ice cream after the cops left, because they knew that whatever had happened, I needed cheering up. I got the flavor that I wanted, but when I went to eat it, I noticed something strange. Inside the cup were little pebbles that crunched when I ate the ice cream. I spit them out and cried. Of course, my parents comforted me and promised that it was just some kind of sick coincidence, but come on, that's creepy. Yeah, rightfully so. That's terrifying. You know, I've been on both sides of hiring babysitters and being a babysitter. And I can tell you that I've never once in my life been to a house where the parents left the child a phone that they could use, especially not one that was hooked up to a landline. And I've had teenage babysitters that I trusted to watch my younger siblings when I was 16, and my parents did, and even let me have a phone during those times. So I don't understand why these parents thought that was okay, but they didn't really think anything of it. Like this is some crazy horror story now. But they were like, oh yeah, that weird thing that totally should have set off alarm bells in our heads. Let's just ignore that. And this is another reason why I'm against hiring teenagers to babysit because, yeah, I get it. We don't want to be stuck at home on a Friday night. We want to go out and do fun stuff. But if your kid is young enough that you need a babysitter, you shouldn't leave them alone with a teenager. This whole story is just weird. Like, why did the monster call the house? Why impersonate the daughter if it's not going to benefit the monster in any way? Maybe the monster was trying to mess with the daughter, like mentally torment her by letting her know that the monster was there, knowing that the daughter would probably find the phone call weird, but not take any action because children are too trusting. Or maybe the monster was calling to make sure that the daughter was still in the house before doing whatever it was that the monster planned on doing. Either way, it doesn't really matter, because obviously this wasn't a normal person, which leads me to my next question. What the hell was that monster planning on doing? Like, I get that the meat cleaver is a big red flag, but what was it going to do with that meat cleaver? Was it going to kill the kid? Was it going to carve up the kid? Was it going to cook the kid? Well, we may have our answer thanks to this comment from another user. This happened to my cousin when she was 8. She woke up in the middle of the night to someone tapping her shoulder. When she turned over, she saw a figure looming over her with a butcher knife raised above her head. She screamed and buried her face in her pillow. Her father had a heart attack and died 2 weeks later. The babysitter was convicted of murder in another state and was suspected of killing more than 30 men. Oh my God, yeah, you can't make this stuff up. This is exactly why you should never leave a child alone with a babysitter, especially a babysitter that you just met. Don't get me wrong, there are great babysitters out there, and most of them are teenagers looking to make some extra money. But if you have a young kid, you should never leave them alone with a teenager. It's just too risky. Now, in this case, it turns out that the babysitter was a monster that was preying on children, which is obviously the worst-case scenario. But if you just leave your kid with a normal person, what if that babysitter makes a mistake? What if they leave the kid alone in the house for a minute, while they run to the store and something happens? Kids are unpredictable. If you put them in a situation where something could happen to them, chances are something will happen. Now, in this particular case, I think that the parents made a very understandable mistake. I mean, you hire a babysitter from an agency, right? So you assume that they're vetted and that they're safe. Plus, when the call comes in, they don't think much of it, which I totally get. Like, it's not like they think, oh, the babysitter is calling to tell me that she's actually a monster and I should come home right away. They just think, weird, where are they getting that from? And honestly, I would probably react the same way. But this is a reminder to always be on guard. Even if you're dealing with somebody that seems completely normal, they might not be. But that's just my opinion. Why don't you guys let me know your thoughts in the comments? The stranger who texted me in my own voice. I had been talking to this girl online for a while now. She was a stranger that I matched with on a social media platform. We had been messaging each other almost daily for about 2 months. But since neither one of us really felt comfortable enough to make the first move and actually start a call, it only ever communicated through text. She would send me pictures of herself, selfies mostly, and I would send her selfies too. I was really drawn to her. She was beautiful and funny and smart. We had a lot in common, like our love of Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and our favorite foods and even our favorite bands. It felt like I'd known her forever. But then one day she stopped responding to my messages. I thought maybe she'd blocked me or worse, that she'd found someone else and moved on without me. And believe me when I say that I was devastated, because up until that point, I'd started to develop real feelings for her. About a week went by, and I still hadn't heard from her. So I decided to reach out to her through another social media platform. I sent her a message asking if everything was okay. But unfortunately, she didn't respond. And just when I was starting to lose all hope of ever seeing her again, she messaged me back. I couldn't believe it. I was so happy that she'd gotten back in touch with me. But something wasn't right. Her responses were slow and sometimes hours apart. Also, they were very brief. It was clear that whatever she was going through, she didn't want to talk about it. One night, she sent me a voice message instead of a text message. It was a minute long, and it was me. It sounded exactly like me. I was clearly in trouble because I could hear commotion in the background and what sounded like screams. I was also crying and scared. Help me. I don't know where I am, I said. The recording ended abruptly after that. And then she sent me another one. "They're here," she whispered. "I don't want them to find me. Please help me." Then she hung up. It was obvious that this was an emergency. So I tried calling her, but the call went straight to voicemail. I left a message, but I don't remember what I said. I was too worried about her to think straight. After a few minutes, she called me back. When I answered, all I could hear was heavy breathing on the other end. I asked what was happening and who was there with her, but she wouldn't say anything. She just kept crying and begging for help. Then the phone went dead. I called her back, but this time the call went straight to voicemail. I tried again, but it did the same. I must have dialed her number 20 times that night, but it was always the same thing. Voicemail. By this point, I was seriously concerned about her safety, so I contacted her friends and family to see if they could get in touch with her or figure out what was going on. I even contacted her landlord in hopes that he would let me into her apartment in case she needed help. At some point during all of this, I checked the metadata on that first voice note that she sent me, and that S when I learned that it had been recorded in my bedroom. I live alone, and nobody has access to my house. I was shocked. Why would she be in my bedroom? What was she doing in my bed? I immediately called the police and told them about the situation. They took down all the details, but they said that without hard evidence that a crime had been committed, there was nothing they could do. So I spent the rest of the night worrying about this girl. I kept replaying those voice messages in my head over and over, trying to figure out what was going on and why she was in my house. When the sun came up, I went out to look for her. I searched everywhere, the shops, restaurants, parks, anywhere she might have been. I even put up posters with her picture on them and asked people if they had seen her. But after 3 days of searching and no sign of her, I went back home, dejected and desperate for answers. But none of them made any sense. I mean, why would somebody pretend to be me, record themselves in my bedroom, and then send me the recording? And even if they had done it, why would they stop responding to my calls and messages? Was it some kind of sick joke? But if it was, why would they go to such lengths to play it out? As the weeks passed, I became more and more convinced that something terrible had happened to her. I often wondered if she was out there somewhere hiding, scared, hoping that whoever was after her would eventually give up. Sometimes I would get a random text message or a voice message, and every time my hopes would soar that she might be out there somewhere and alive. But every time it was just some stranger pretending to be her, sending me cruel and hurtful messages. Over time, those messages got worse and worse. First, they were pretending to be her. Then they were pretending to be her friends and family. And then they were just random nasty things. I was hoping that by now, it would all be over. That whoever it was that was messing with me had tired of their game. But that was far from the truth. One night I received a message from her mother. I was overjoyed. Finally had a lead on her whereabouts. Maybe I would see her again. Maybe she was safe and sound and just needed some support. I called her mother as soon as I saw the message, but the call went straight to voicemail. I left a message, but I don't remember what I said. All I knew is that I wanted her mom to know that I loved her daughter and that I would do anything to find her. A couple of hours later, I received a voice message from her mom. It was a rough recording. The background noise made it hard to hear, but I could make out what she was saying. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have called you sooner. I didn't know how to reach out. I didn't know what to say. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry." Called her back, but the call went straight to voicemail. I called again, but it was the same. I kept calling, but I never got through. Days turned into weeks and still no answer. Finally, I received a message from her mother again. This time it was a text message. "She's gone. I'm so sorry. I should have called you sooner. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry."
Hi.
With shaky hands, I dialed her number. Her voicemail picked up. "Hi, you've reached. Please leave a message." Beep. Tears streamed down my face as I spoke into the phone. "Is this a joke? Where are you? You need to tell me where she is. Please tell me where she is." There was a long pause before she finally responded. Her voice was weak and distant. "I'm so sorry, you don't understand. It's not a joke. I am her, it's me." My heart sank. I was talking to her, but it wasn't her. Whoever this was sounded exactly like her, but she wasn't there. We talked for a while longer, and it became clear that she was heavily sedated and barely conscious. She told me that she was in a hospital, but she didn't know how she got there. She also told me that she had no memory of the past 2 years of her life. She didn't know who her friends or family were. She didn't know where she lived. And most importantly, she didn't know who I was. The last thing she said to me was, "I'm so sorry. I don't know who you are, but thank you for trying to help me. Really appreciate it." And then she hung up. I never heard from her again. 2 weeks later, I received a call from the police. They told me that she had regained consciousness and was able to provide them with some information. Apparently, they had been able to trace the phone number that she was using back to a clinic. It turns out she had been taken to the clinic by a man who pretended to be her boyfriend. The clinic's security footage showed them entering the building together, but once inside, the man disappeared and nobody had seen him since. As for her, the police said she was suffering from amnesia, and they were working hard to try and piece together what had happened to her over the past 2 years. To this day, I have no idea who this man was and what he did to her. I can only hope that someday she will recover and that she will remember who she is and who I am. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. The school security cam that caught me walking alone. I'm a 26-year-old male who works as a janitor at a middle school. This happened about 2 months ago. I work at this school alone at night. My job is to go through and empty all of the trash cans, clean up any food that's been left behind by students, and make sure all the doors are locked for the next day. Since it's summer, there are no students or teachers around except for a few night classes going on here and there. The school has a very large security system with cameras placed everywhere inside and outside the school. There are also motion detectors set up throughout the halls, and they re-hooked up to the cameras so if anything were to happen, the police would be notified immediately. All these cameras are hooked up to monitors in my office. On any given night, I will check up on them maybe once or twice. One night I was going through my usual routine, cleaning up after a karate class that had stayed late and doing some organizing in the library. I don't know how long I was in there for, but it must have been a while because when I came out into the hall, it was pitch black. All the lights had been turned off, and the motion sensor light in the hall turned on as I walked. I looked over at the monitor to see what was going on. I could see myself walking down the hall, but that wasn't possible. I was sitting in the office. So I stood up and went over to the camera monitor and saw that it was glitching out. I could see the image of me walking in the hall on the camera, but I couldn't get a clear picture of which camera it was. I felt a chill run down my spine and I quickly brushed it off. I told myself that there was a simple explanation for this, and that there was no way that I was seeing a ghost. I continued on with my normal routine, emptying the trash cans, cleaning the tables and chairs outside, and gathering up any textbooks that had been left behind by students. Once everything was cleaned up and put away, I started my rounds to lock up for the night. I always start with the classrooms, and then make my way towards the gym at the end of the hall. As I walked past the library, I looked over at the monitor and saw the same thing, me walking down the hall. But this time, I could see more clearly. I recognized that it was the camera outside the library. I should have felt relieved to see that it was just a technical difficulty, but instead I felt even more creeped out. I knew that this wasn't right and that something was wrong. As I approached the gym, which was at the end of the hall, I noticed that the door was open. I knew that I had locked it earlier in the day, since I used the bathroom right next to it before I started my rounds. I walked closer and looked through the window on the side. It was still dark outside, and I could hear people inside. I knew that the track team used the gym late at night sometimes, but they would never leave the door open. I grabbed the handle and pushed it open, calling out to see if anyone was in there. No response. I stepped inside and shut the door behind me. As I scanned the room, I noticed that the basketball court was empty and all the lights were turned off, except for the one above me. I could hear voices coming from the weight room, so I walked over and peeked through the doorway. 2 guys were sitting on a bench talking. They looked up as I entered, and one of them called out, "Hey janitor, do you see a ghost around here?" Startled, I responded, What do you mean?" He pointed towards the camera mounted on the wall and said, "That camera hasn't worked in weeks. We saw you walking through the hall and we thought it was just a ghost." Relief washed over me as I realized that I wasn't actually seeing a ghost. I explained to them that I had seen the same thing on another camera and asked if they had seen it too. They both shook their heads and said that they hadn't seen it. I thanked them and headed back to the office. I sat down in my chair and began checking the cameras. I wanted to see if the camera outside the library had picked up anything else, and if the other cameras had caught anything. As I looked through the camera feed, I saw that the camera outside the library had recorded me walking down the hall twice. The first time it recorded me was the same time that I saw it, but the second time it didn't. The rest of the cameras had not picked up anything. I tried to make sense of what I was seeing and came up with nothing. I knew that I was in the office when I saw the image of myself walking the hall, and I had no reason to go out there. My mind raced, trying to come up with an explanation. I considered the possibility that someone had hacked into the system and was playing a trick on me. But I knew that this was unlikely, since the school takes online security very seriously. I thought about the possibility that it was a glitch in the system, but I couldn't understand why the glitch only appeared on one camera, and why it only recorded me walking down the hall twice. I knew that if I didn't have proof that this was happening, no one would believe me. And I didn't want to look like I was losing my mind. I decided to keep an eye on things and see if it happened again. I sat back down in my chair and began monitoring the cameras. An hour passed, and nothing happened. I was beginning to think that it wouldn't happen again when I heard footsteps in the hall. I looked up and saw myself walking towards my office. I watched as the image of me stopped in front of the monitor and pointed to the camera. I felt a surge of fear, and I quickly turned the monitor off and hid under my desk. I don't know how long I stayed there for, but eventually I got bored and came out from under the desk. I cautiously approached the monitor and turned it back on. The image of myself was still there, and the camera was still focused on the monitor. I pressed the button to change the channel and saw that the camera outside the library was now showing an image of the gym. I changed back to the camera in the hall and saw that the image of myself was gone. I slowly got up from my chair and walked over to the door. As I opened it, I could hear people talking in the hall. I looked out and saw that the coast was clear. I closed the door and returned to my office. I sat down in my chair and let out a sigh of relief. I still couldn't explain what I was seeing, but I was grateful that I wasn't alone. I worked the rest of my shift without incident, and I haven't seen the ghost since. But every time I walk past the library, I can't help but look over my shoulder. The next morning, I came in early to finish some paperwork. As I walked past the library, I noticed that the camera outside was missing. I asked the head of security about it, and he informed me that it had been taken down due to technical difficulties. I couldn't help but wonder if the camera would be fixed anytime soon. After all, it was important to have all the cameras working properly for security purposes. A few days passed, and I hadn't seen the ghost again. I was beginning to think that it was just a figment of my imagination, when I heard footsteps in the hall. I turned around and saw the same image of myself walking towards my office. I could feel my heart racing as I watched the image stop in front of the monitor and point to the camera. I pressed the button to change the channel and saw that the camera outside the library was now showing an image of the gym. I changed back to the camera in the hall and saw that the image of myself was gone. I slowly got up from my chair and walked over to the door. As I opened it, I could hear people talking in the hall. I looked out and saw that the coast was clear. I closed the door and returned to my office. I sat down in my chair and let out a sigh of relief. I still couldn't explain what I was seeing, but I was grateful that I wasn't alone. I worked the rest of my shift without incident, and I haven't seen the ghost since. But every time I walk past the library, I can't help but look over my shoulder. Welcome to my channel. This is the scariest place I've ever worked. I work at a 24/7 gym. That's open 365 days a year. We have all kinds of members. From people who are training for bodybuilding competitions to those who just want to come in every once in a while to lift some weights and get in shape. Because it's a big gym with a lot of different equipment, there are bound to be some weird things going on at any given time. But these are some of the scariest things that happened while I was working at this gym. The first story I'd like to tell you about is a locked room. There is a room at the back of the gym that is off limits to employees. The door has no windows, and it's padlocked shut. Nobody knows what's inside the room or why it's there. One day late at night, I was getting stuff out of the stock closet, which is right next to the locked room. As I was grabbing some towels, I heard someone crying very loudly inside the locked room. It sounded like a man sobbing uncontrollably. I thought to myself, there's no way anyone could be in there. It's locked, and no one knows the combination, except the manager. Still, I couldn't help but wonder if someone had broken in, or maybe the lock had been tampered with. So I went over to the door and tried to open it. Of course, it wouldn't budge. I started to walk away, but then I stopped and turned around to face the door again. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and started to kick the door. After a few minutes of relentless kicking, the lock broke and the door swung open. I cautiously entered the room and flipped the light switch. To my surprise, there was nothing in the room but a mirror. As I approached the mirror, I noticed something strange. It wasn't my reflection that was staring back at me. Instead, it was an older version of myself. I looked like I had aged 10 years in a matter of months. I was skinny and my hair was messy. And worst of all, I was crying. When he looked at me, he looked down and whispered, "You let it out." Before I could respond, he disappeared. The room was empty. I checked everywhere, but there was no sign of anyone. I walked over to the other side of the mirror, and my own reflection appeared. I know what that room was for, or what that old version of me was doing in there. But it's been years, and I still can't look at mirrors the same way. This next encounter happened after I'd already left that gym and started working at another one. I was working the front desk when a new member came up to me and asked for help finding a weight rack. He said he saw one in the security cameras. I went with him to find the rack. Cameras showed it was in the back corner of the gym. When we got there, we realized that the rack was empty. We decided to check the camera feed to see where the rack had come from. As we watched, we saw it being wheeled out of the building by someone. But when we tried to look at the timestamp, we realized that the camera wasn't recording. It was completely blank. I know if that's a glitch in the system, or if they were trying to hide something, but I'm pretty sure that it's the latter. We continued to watch the live feed to see where the guy went with the rack, but it was to no avail. He had taken it into a storage room where the cameras didn't reach. We still don't know where that rack is, or what that guy was trying to hide. Another weird thing that used to happen at the gym was lights flickering. I'd be walking around the gym minding my own business, when suddenly the lights would flicker and dim. Sometimes they would even turn off for a few seconds. Other times the lights would flicker and I'd hear footsteps coming from the ceiling. I'd look up and see nothing. Sometimes I'd even hear voices, but they never made any sense. They were always unintelligible and sounded like they were arguing. I do know if the building was haunted, or if it was just old and the wiring was bad. But either way, it was really creepy. In addition to the lights flickering, sometimes other things would move on their own. For example, I'd be sitting at the front desk and I'd see water bottles roll across the floor by themselves. Sometimes I'd even see them fall off shelves and break. The strangest thing was that they would move in patterns. I'd see them move toward the door, then they'd stop. Then a few minutes later, they'd start moving again, this time moving away from the door. I don't know what was causing them to move like that, but it was really eerie. One time I was working the night shift when I heard something heavy being dragged across the floor in the cardio room. I thought to myself it must be one of the trainers moving equipment around. But then I remembered that no one else was scheduled to be in the gym, so I grabbed my keys and went to investigate. As I entered the cardio room, I saw a stationary bike that had been moved away from the wall. The bike was covered in sweat, and the seat was in a strange position. I don't remember exactly what it was, but something about the bike just felt wrong. It was like it was inviting me to sit down and take a ride. Maybe it was the squeak in the seat or the fact that the TV was tuned to a random channel. Whatever it was, it scared the hell out of me. I called the police to do a wellness check, but they couldn't find anything wrong. I quit the next day. On a more positive note, I want to share with you this cool trick that I learned that will help you add more protein to your diet. You probably already know that protein is important for muscle growth and repair, but did you know that it can also help you lose weight? Protein is a filling nutrient, meaning that it can help you feel full for longer. This is because protein takes longer to digest than carbs or fat. So if you're looking to lose weight, try adding more protein to your diet. One easy way to do this is to start taking a protein powder. Protein powder is a great way to get more protein into your diet because it's convenient and affordable. Plus, it comes in a variety of flavors so you can find one that you like. Another weird thing that happened at the gym was that we kept getting flooded. The first time it happened, I was working the front desk when the fire alarm went off. I thought to myself, great, someone pulled the alarm because they wanted to cause trouble. So I went to investigate. As I walked through the gym, I noticed that the lights were flashing red. That meant that the alarm was real. I ran to the back of the gym and saw water pouring in through the ceiling. I quickly called 911 and we were evacuated. It turned out that there was a pipe that had burst in the ceiling. The water was coming from the apartment above us. The landlord ended up fixing the pipe and we were able to go back into the gym after a few hours. But this wasn't the last time we got flooded. In fact, it happened 2 more times after that. Each time it would rain heavily, we'd end up with a small leak in the ceiling. I don't know if it's because the building is old or if the roof is damaged. But either way, it's really annoying to keep getting flooded. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. If you have any scary stories of your own, please share them below. Thanks for watching. That's why you shouldn't post on Reddit. A little over a week ago, I was looking through the subreddit, No Sleep. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's basically stories that are meant to scare you. And sometimes these stories are completely made up by users. Other times they're based on true events. I like reading them. I think they're fun. But of course, I know they're just stories. Nothing could ever come from something posted on Reddit. Then I saw this one Reddit post that knew my life a little too well. It was titled, How I'll Kill You, and it read, "You will never see it coming. We'll be in your home, and I'll be in yours. I'll watch you for a while. Observe your habits. Learn your patterns. Then when you least expect it, I'll be inside your closet, hiding in the darkness. The moment you turn off the lights, I strike. I'll come out of the closet and stab you multiple times in front of your family. Their blood will be on my hands, and their cries for help will echo in my ears. But it'll be worth it because you won't be there to stop me. After all, you're dead. Then I'll take all of your money and valuables and burn your house down, so that no one can find any trace of you or your family. You woe, and even have a proper burial, because it'll make sure that your bodies are completely unrecognizable. If you're still alive, I'll finish you off with my bare hands. Well, you may try to defend yourself, but it'll be futile. I am superior in every way. I'll hunt you down and make you suffer before taking your life. There is nothing you can do to stop me. Once I set my mind to something, I won't rest until I achieve my goal. So be afraid, because the night I come for you, you won't be able to hide. I will find you no matter what." At first I thought this was just some messed up story written by a troubled teenager. But then I got to the comments section and people were commenting on how accurate this was. One comment read, "I can already see it happening. The news will be filled with articles about how terrible this person is, but no one will know that I knew this all along." Another said, "Wait till he kills someone. I bet his next-door neighbor is his next victim." A third said, "I bet Opus has a secret passageway into his neighbor's house through the crawl space." And the last one simply said, "Soon." Each of these comments were made by throwaway accounts, meaning that whoever created these accounts didn't use their real Reddit names. They were clearly hiding behind fake accounts. Was this a coincidence? Had someone actually hacked into my house and was watching my every move? I couldn't just ignore this post. Had to get to the bottom of it. I decided to copy the text of the Reddit post and run it through a Google search, but nothing came up. I tried running my home address through a Google search, but nothing came up. It was as if this post had been written in a vacuum. This could have been written by anyone, and I'd never know. I considered posting on the No Sleep subreddit asking for more information, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to draw more attention to myself. Maybe this whole thing would blow over and I could pretend like it never happened. Then I got a call from the police. It turns out someone had broken into my house and left fingerprints all over the place. According to the police report, sometime between 9 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. someone had snuck into my house through an unlocked window and rummed family around. They took some food and some cash from my kitchen, but they didn't take anything of value. As they were going through my house, they went into my office, opened my drawers, looked through my cabinets. They even opened my refrigerator. The only thing they took was some food. And the cash from my wallet? They didn't take my phone. They didn't take my laptop. They didn't take my jewelry, which was sitting out on the counter. They just took food and some cash. And the only place they left fingerprints was under my bed. I guess that's where they were hiding while they waited for me to go to sleep. I'm not sure if this has anything to do with that Reddit post or not, but I did want to share it with you guys. I haven't slept in 2 days. Constantly looking over my shoulder. I keep thinking that I hear footsteps outside of my house at night. I check my locks every 30 minutes. Am I overreacting? It's probably just some random break-in. But I know that if this was really a threat, then whoever wrote this is playing a very long game. They waited months to carry out their plan. If this is just a coincidence, then why did they leave fingerprints under my bed? An update: I should mention that I've been talking to the police about this. They're taking it seriously. but I'm starting to think that maybe this whole thing was a bit of a coincidence. Yeah, whoever wrote that Reddit post did a good job describing my house and my life. But could they have gotten that information from my social media or something? It's not like my house is that special. Lots of other houses look the same. Lots of other people have the same schedule as me. What are the odds that someone would sneak into my house, steal a few things, and leave fingerprints under my bed all to mess with me? I mean, it's possible, sure. But I'm starting to think that this might have been a coincidence. Another update? I feel bad for getting everyone's hopes up with that last update. I was really hoping that this was just a coincidence. Fortunately, I think we can put that theory to rest. The police called me today to say that they caught the guy who broke into my house. He was doing the same thing in other neighborhoods, robbing houses and leaving fingerprints. Apparently he does this as a game. He doesn't need the money. He's rich. He just does it because he can and because he likes leaving fingerprints at crime scenes. Police told me that they caught him after they traced the fingerprints back to a local university. Turns out he's a student there. They questioned him and apparently he cracked pretty easily. Confessed to robbing my house and breaking into dozens of other homes in the area. The police asked him why he left fingerprints under my bed, and he said that he was trying to leave a calling card. It was a weird answer, but hey, at least I'm safe now, right? One last thing. He told the police that he read the Reddit post How I'll Kill You and thought it was funny how accurate it was. He said that it sounded like the perfect plan. He thought about trying it, but he decided against it. In the end, he robbed my house because he saw an opportunity, and he chose to take it. This is the host. Thanks for watching. Also, if you want to support my work, then buy me a coffee. Thanks. What the hell? Stood up, walked to the other end of the car. Was anyone else there? No, still nothing but empty seats. I looked down the tracks. Nothing. Looked back at the doors. They were now closed. I thought about turning the emergency brake, but what if it was a false alarm? What if I ended up stranded in an empty subway car with no way to get out for who knows how long? Maybe I should just wait until the next stop and see what happens. But where was I? Where are we going? Why did everyone leave? And where the hell was the conductor? At this point, I was debating whether or not I should get out at the next stop, which felt like it was a few minutes away, or try to flag someone down in the tunnels between stations to ask them what the hell was going on. But then the doors slid open again, and I saw a man standing in the tunnel with a flashlight. He had a confused look on his face as he scanned the car. I waved my hand frantically and yelled, "Hey, excuse me, can you help me? Where's everyone?" He paused, turned to me, gave me a wild look, and then rushed past me into the car. "Oh, thank God," he said. I thought I was the only one left. He explained that he was heading home from a late-night shift at the hospital, and that he didn't realize the trains were running so late. He didn't know where we were. Got onto the train because he didn't want to be outside by himself. So late, and he assumed that we'd be heading downtown towards the last station on the line. "Ah, yeah, me too," I said, thinking it was a good idea to stick together. "We can look out for each other." "Yeah, me too," I said, thinking it was a good idea to stick together. I realized it would be easier to find someone to help us than to try to flag someone down while we were in the tunnel. We continued riding the train. Neither of us said a word. We could hear the loud rumble of the tracks and the screech of the train as it sped through the dark tunnels. It was eerie. I started to get really scared. This wasn't right. It shouldn't be so quiet. I felt like something bad was going to happen. The man in front of me suddenly turned around. He looked pale. "What?" I asked. "Where are we?" I followed his gaze. We were both staring at the same thing. It's the fact that there was supposed to be another train in front of us, but there wasn't. There was only darkness. We stared at the doors that were supposed to be opening in 30 seconds. "That's not good," he said quietly. His voice echoed in the giant space. "What?" I shouted. "Oh. Why isn't it moving?" The man ran to the other end of the train car and yelled, "Hello? Is anybody there?" Silence. Then the emergency bell rang. It was deafening. Now I was panicking. Oh, what if this was some kind of sick joke? What if we were trapped here forever? Or worse, what if this was the last train of the night, and we were being taken off the tracks completely? My mind raced with thoughts. I couldn't think straight. I needed to get out of there. I thought about turning the emergency brake, but what if it was a false alarm? And if I ended up stranded in an empty subway car with no way to get out for who knows how long? Maybe I should just wait until the next stop and see what happens. But where was I? Where are we going? Why did everyone leave? And where the hell was the conductor? At this point, I was debating whether or not I should get out at the next stop, which felt like it was a few minutes away. I tried to flag someone down in the tunnels between stations to ask them what the hell was going on. But then the doors slid open again, and I saw a man standing in the tunnel with a flashlight. He had a confused look on his face as he scanned the car. I waved my hand frantically and yelled, "Hey, excuse me, can you help me? Where is everyone?" He paused, turned to me, gave me a wild look, and then rushed past me into the car. "Oh, thank God," he said. I thought I was the only one left. Explained that he was heading home from a late-night shift at the hospital, that he didn't realize the trains were running so late. He didn't know where we were, got onto the train because he didn't want to be outside by himself so late, and he assumed that we'd be heading downtown towards the last station on the line. "Yeah, and me too," I said, thinking it was a good idea to stick together. The doors slid shut, and the man turned to me. "Well," he said, "at least we aren't alone anymore, right?" I forced a smile, but it felt like something bad was going to happen. We continued riding the train. Neither of us said a word. We could hear the loud rumble of the tracks and the screech of the train as it sped through the dark tunnels. It was eerie. Started to get really scared. This wasn't right. It shouldn't be so quiet. I felt like something bad was going to happen. We went over a bump, and the light flickered. The man in front of me suddenly turned around. He looked pale. "What?" I asked. "Where are we?" Followed his gaze. We were both staring at the same thing. The fact that there was supposed to be another train in front of us, but there wasn't. There was only darkness. We stared at the doors that were supposed to be opening in 30 seconds. "That's not good," he said quietly. His voice echoed in the giant space. "What?" I shouted. "Why isn't it moving?" The man ran to the other end of the train car and yelled, "Hello! Is anybody there?" Silence. Then the emergency bell rang. It was deafening. I was panicking. What if this was some kind of sick joke? What if we were trapped here forever? Or worse, what if this was the last train of the night and we were being taken off the tracks completely? My mind raced with thoughts. I couldn't think straight. I needed to get out of there. I thought about turning the emergency brake, but what if it was a false alarm? What if I ended up stranded in an empty subway car with no way to get out for who knows how long? Maybe I should just wait until the next stop and see what happens. But where was I? Where are we going? Why did everyone leave? And where the hell was the conductor? At this point, I was debating whether or not I should get out at the next stop, which felt like it was a few minutes away, or try to flag someone down in the tunnels between stations to ask them what the hell was going on. But then the doors slid open again, and I saw a man standing in the tunnel with a flashlight. He had a confused look on his face as he scanned the car. I waved my hand frantically and yelled, "Hey, excuse me, can you help me? Where is everyone?" He paused, turned to me, gave me a wild look, and then rushed past me into the car. "Oh, thank God," he said. I thought I was the only one left. He explained that he was heading home from a late-night shift at the hospital, and that he did unrealize the trains were running so late. He didn't know where we were. He got onto the train because he didn't want to be outside by himself so late, and he assumed that we'd be heading downtown towards the last station on the line. "Yeah, and me too," I said, thinking it was a good idea to stick together. The door slid shut, and the man turned to me. "Well," he said, "at least we aren't alone anymore, right?" I forced a smile, but it felt like something bad was going to happen. We continued riding the train. Neither of us said a word. We could hear the loud rumble of the tracks and the screech of the train as it sped through the dark tunnels. It was eerie. I started to get really scared. This wasn't right. It shouldn't be so quiet. I felt like something bad was going to happen. We went over a bump and the light flickered. "Is the train broken?" I asked, my voice trembling. The man shook his head, but before he could say anything, the lights went out completely, plunging us into total darkness. The man screamed. I could hear the frantic beating of his heart. "Help! Please! Somebody help us!" he cried. I don't remember what happened next. It all happened so fast. One minute I was sitting in a dark subway car with a stranger, and the next I was lying on the ground with a throbbing pain in my head. When I came to, I was sitting on a bench in Grand Central Terminal. People were rushing all around me, but it was silent. I couldn't hear a single sound. I looked down at my hands. They were bleeding. I looked up and saw a woman kneeling next to me. "Are you okay?" she asked. I shook my head. "Where am I?" "You're in Grand Central," she said. What happened? I asked. You were in an accident, she replied. What accident? The woman looked away. The train, it derailed, she said quietly. But you're alive, she added, reaching out to touch my arm. That's all that matters? It was always the same. The girl I met in my dream was real. She wore a red dress and she whispered my name. Every night for 2 weeks, then I saw her, really saw her, not just in my dreams. She was standing there in front of me wearing that same red dress. And when she turned around, I saw that she was real because I could see the back of her neck where the skin had been burned off by acid. It was the weirdest thing. In the dream, it was like we were in this little diner and we were talking, and she was looking at me, really looking at me, but she didn't say anything. She just kept staring. I never said anything either, because I didn't know what to say. Like if you're dreaming about someone and they're staring at you, what do you say? And then one night she finally did speak. She said my name. It was the first time I ever heard her voice. Hey, she said, do you know me? She asked me this in the dream. Hey, do you know me? And then she was gone. Then every night she came back and she would sit across from me in the booth and stare at me and whisper my name. But none of them. None of the nights that she actually spoke. She only said my name once. She never said anything else. She just sat there and stared at me, and then she would leave. Then one night she didn't show up. And it was strange because the night before, she'd sat across from me and she'd stared at me and whispered my name. And then I woke up and I thought, I wonder if she's going to be there tonight. You know, 'cause the night before she was there, so I wonder if she'll be there tonight. So I went to sleep, and I couldn't get back to sleep. So I got up, and I walked out into the living room, and I turned on the TV. And while I was flipping through channels, it was like something made me stop on this one channel. And on the TV was this news anchor. And the news anchor was talking about this missing persons case. And the girl who was missing, who was on the missing persons poster, was the girl that I had been seeing in my dreams. And on the news, they said that she had vanished without a trace the day before, which was the same day that I had the dream that I finally saw her. And it was so strange because on the missing persons poster, she was wearing the same red dress that she wore in my dream. So I called the number on the poster and I told them everything. I told them about the dream and the red dress and how she would whisper my name. And I swear to God, I could hear the guy on the other end of the phone roll his eyes. He sounded totally annoyed. And he was like, yeah, okay, listen, we have people that are working on this case, sir. We know that she's missing, okay? So if you have any information at all, you need to tell us. Do you understand? And I could tell that he wasn't buying any of my story. He probably thought I was some kind of crazy person having these dreams about this girl and thinking that somehow I'm connected to her. And I hung up the phone and I just stared at the TV, watching this news clip over and over again. Then the next morning I went outside and on the wooden post that holds our mailboxes, there was a flyer. It was a missing persons flyer for that same girl, and on the back it said, he knows your name now too. In January of 2023, at 2:17 a.m., my phone vibrated. I turned it over to see a new text message. It was from an unknown number. Instead of words, there was only a photo. And that photo was of me, sleeping. Before I get into this video, I'd like to warn you that there will be some flashing images. If this affects you in any way, please turn off your screen's auto brightness and watch with caution. I had never seen this person before, but I could tell instantly that this was not a stranger sending me a creepy picture. This was someone who knew me well. My room was dark, but I recognized the angle of the camera. It was the one my mom uses. And if she wasn't the one who took this picture, then who was? How did they get it? What did it mean? And what was the weirdest part? Why were they only sending me photos? My heart began to race and I immediately called my mother. She picked up after 3 rings. Hi, sweetie. Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you up. I just couldn't sleep and wanted to chat, she said. Why are you taking pictures of my room? I asked, holding back tears. Pictures? She replied. Confused? What do you mean? I haven't taken any pictures tonight. Are you sure you didn't dream it? No, I'm positive. I didn't dream it. Why would I dream that? I responded. We talked for a few more minutes about unimportant things and then hung up. As soon as we ended the call, my phone vibrated again. Another photo. Same angle, different lighting. This time it was a picture of my blankets. As I pulled the covers back, I saw something I didn't recognize. A small black box that looked like a camera was sitting on my bed. I called my mom again. Did you send me these photos? I asked. Her voice sounded tired. What are you talking about? I told you I didn't send you anything. I walked over to the closet, opened it, and found another black square hiding between my clothes. I took it out. It was a wireless Wi-Fi-enabled camera that looked identical to the one I'd seen in the photo. I felt my stomach drop. How did this get in my house? Who put it here? Was my mom trying to spy on me? Had someone broken in and put it there? So many questions ran through my head, but the biggest question was how and why. How did they get this into my room, and why were they spying on me? But then while I was staring at this camera, my eyes caught something. On the bottom was the name of the app used to control this device. I downloaded it on my phone. Once I did, I realized I could view all the recordings from the camera. But that meant that whoever set this up must have been watching my every move. It was then that I remembered. 2 days ago, I had a package delivered. I went to the front door and checked the security footage. It showed a delivery driver holding a package addressed to me. But when he rang the doorbell and my mom opened the door, he handed her the package. She signed the document confirming she received it. Now, I do unblame the delivery driver because it happens all the time where a parent signs for a child's package because they aren't home. But now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure the driver said, "You're lucky I found you." This was a very difficult address. Then he laughed. Weird. I thought maybe he was just referring to my street because it is really long and curvy. But now I think he was referring to something else. Maybe he knew the contents of the package and knew my mom would hide it from me somehow. When I found the camera, it was almost 4 a.m. and I was scared to go back to bed. But as I sat down and tried to process everything, my phone vibrated again. I reached over to grab it and the notification read, "You have received a text message." Once again, it was from the same unknown number. This time the photo was of my empty closet. Whoever was sending these messages knew that I knew that they were there. They knew that I knew they had put a camera in my room. So why were they still sending me these photos? Were they trying to scare me? Damn. And then my phone vibrated for a third time, but this time it wasn't a text message. It was an emergency alert that read, "Emergency alert. Shelter in place. He is already inside." My heart began to race. I immediately called 911. They had no record of an alert being sent out. When I explained what was happening, they thought I was joking around. As we receive hundreds of calls like this every day, people like to play around with these alerts. "They aren't real," the operator said. "No, I'm serious. Look at my phone," I begged. But before the operator could respond, the alert disappeared from my phone. All that was left was a blank page. "See, nothing's there," the operator said, suspiciously. "Ma'am, I'm not playing. Please send help. Think someone is in my house right now," I cried. "Okay, listen, if you want us to send someone over, we need an address and a reason to go there. I can hear background noise in your call. If someone is really in your house, you should hang up and call back from a neighbor's house," the operator said. "But I'm scared to leave my house." "What if they're waiting for me outside?" I asked. "If you're that worried, then stay on the line and we'll send an officer by," she replied. So I waited. I waited 10 minutes, then 20, then 30. Still no one came. So I decided to go check on my mom. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, I could see that she was crying. "Mom, why were you taking pictures of my room?" I asked. "I wasn't," she responded. "I swear, you're going crazy. Why would I take pictures of your room?" "Then why were these pictures sent to me?" I replied, showing her the photos. "What? You got pictures?" she asked. "Yes, like the ones you sent to yourself, you idiot. Don't you know that your phone automatically saves any picture that you take?" she said. I was confused. "What does that mean? You took these pictures, honey?" "Why would I take pictures of your room?" my mom said. "But I didn't take these photos." "Why would you say that the photos are mine when you know I didn't take them?" I responded. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you didn't know. Someone hacked into your account and used your phone against you. They made it seem like I was taking pictures and sending them to you. But trust me, it was your phone doing all of that," she said. "But how did they get your phone?" I asked. "They broke in last night while you were sleeping. They took your phone, took some pictures, then left." "I'm so sorry, baby," my mom said, hugging me. At that moment, I believed my mom. I didn't know why she would lie to me about something like this, even though the police didn't come. And even though the photos were sent from her phone, I knew that she was telling the truth. I hugged her back and went back to my room. I was still scared to leave, but as the morning passed, I started to feel better. My dad came home early, and we called the police together. They came, took a look around, and filed a report for the break-in. They also said that someone had used my phone to try and hack into my school's system, but they blocked it before anything happened. I think they were trying to get my grades changed or something stupid like that. But what bothered me the most was that they never found the person who broke into our house. We're still living in the same house today, but since that day, I've moved my bed and put up new security cameras. Sometimes I wonder why my house was chosen and what they were planning to do, but most of the time, I'm just glad that we're okay. That's all for this video. Remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Make cookies instead. I was going through some of our old photo albums looking for a specific picture. It was the first time in many years that I had taken the time to actually look at these physical photos, instead of just keeping them on a hard drive or on my phone. And it's amazing how much life, how much love, joy, and sorrow can be packed into a single photo. A photo is really like a snapshot of a moment in time, capturing not only where you were, but who you were with and how you felt. As I was going through the pictures, there was one particular photo that I kept seeing. Now, I don't know if this is actually important or not, but this might be one of those ones where it is. So bear with me here. But I grew up in a very religious household. My parents were missionaries, so we moved around quite a bit. We lived overseas for a total of 10 years before finally settling back here in the States, when I was in high school. This particular photo was from when we were living in Guatemala. And this is what's strange. I kept seeing the same man in the background of several photos. He seemed to be watching us, always standing in the background. The first time I saw him was in a picture of me on my 2nd birthday. I mean, take a good look at him. Doesn't he look creepy? It's one thing to show up in a few pictures, but this guy literally showed up to every major event. He was in the background of my 4th birthday party, my 6th birthday party, my 7th birthday party, and he was also in the background of my baby shower. But then he started showing up at other things too, like family gatherings, church events, even weddings. I remember staring at this picture for a long time, because I couldn't figure out why he would show up to every single event, but never come up front to talk to anyone. Was he related to someone? Was he a friend of the family? Why did he seem to know all of us, yet none of us knew him? And if you notice, he always seems to be wearing the same black shirt, which, by the way, is strange because Guatemala is known for its intense heat. You have to wear light clothing just to survive down there. So why would this guy show up wearing a black shirt to every single event? To make matters worse, I'm pretty sure he was trying to avoid being seen, because he always seemed to be kind of blending in with the wall or the trees in the background. If you look closely, you can see his face glitch in this picture. Right. But maybe this next one is even weirder. If you zoom in, you can see his face glitching in the background of this wedding picture. And if you look really closely, you can see what looks like a hood behind him. This wasn't even our wedding. It was a wedding of 2 people we barely knew. Okay, this next one is one of the creepiest, because this is a picture of my dad and I standing in front of our house in Guatemala. The person right next to him, that's our landlord. And the guy behind him is the same guy who was in the other photos. He wasn't our landlord. He didn't live with us. He wasn't a friend of the family or a relative, yet he seemed to show up everywhere we went. So it wasn't until I got back home that I told my mom, "Hey, I found these photos, and I keep seeing this man in the background. Do you know who he is?" She says, "Who?" And I showed her the photos. Then she said, "No, I'm sorry, I have no idea who that is." So I asked her again, "Are you sure? Because he's in a lot of the photos, especially early on. I mean, he's even in pictures of me as a baby." And she said, "I promise I have no idea who that is. Maybe he was a missionary or something, and he just followed us around or something. I don't know. I'm sorry." Well, I still had questions, so I decided to ask my older brother. He lives overseas now, so I sent him a message saying, "Hey, was looking through some old photos and I keep seeing this random dude in the background of a lot of them. Do you know who he is?" He replied. "Dude, are you freaking kidding me? I have been meaning to tell you about this guy forever. It's freaking weird. I didn't think you remembered him." And I said, "Remember what? Remember who?" Then he said, "This guy." And he sent me a picture. And sure enough, there he was. Then my brother said, "I remember because whenever he would show up, I would try to ask people who he was, but nobody knew. I asked you once and you just laughed at me. I swear we could do a whole video on just this guy. There's like 1 million photos of him." So now I'm thinking, okay, let's just go through every single photo where he shows up. Let's just get this done. And I was going to do that, but I stopped. I stopped because I realized I don't want to spend my life energy figuring this out. I have no reason to believe that this guy is a bad person, but I do feel uncomfortable knowing that he was watching me and my family grow up, watching us at our most vulnerable moments, watching us celebrate our most joyous occasions. It's kind of like an invasion of privacy. I mean, listen, if he wanted to stay in the background and be left alone, that's fine. We probably wouldn't have ever known. But the fact that he snuck into the foreground, sometimes, and he watched us so closely, it makes me wonder what he was doing and why. I mean, maybe he was lonely and just wanted some company. But if that was the case, why not just come up and say hi? You know, people are generally friendly in Guatemala. Or maybe he had good intentions. Maybe he was protecting us. I know this sounds crazy, but some of the photos he shows up in are from the 80s. And when you look at the clothes he's wearing, they don't really look like they're from that era. They look like they're from more recently. So maybe he was an undercover CIA agent or something. I mean, I've seen movies where people go back in time to protect someone. Could that be it? Is he protecting us from something or someone? I was at a coffee shop trying to work, but people kept interrupting me. Someone would walk by and brush up against my arm. Someone else would sit down at the table next to me and start typing on their laptop. And then there was the barista. She must have thought I was made out of wood or something, because every 5 minutes, she'll come over and tap the counter to see if I was still alive. This is why I went out and spent $300 on a brand new set of Bose Quiet Comfort 45 headphones. These puppies were supposed to block out everything in my world, so I could focus on what was important, namely getting this video done. So I put them on and pressed play. But even though they were on full blast, I could still hear all the sounds around me. In fact, it sounded like the volume had been turned up. At first it was just the low rumble of voices and the clatter of cups and the whoosh of the espresso machine. But then there was also the squeak of the chair next to me and the tap, tap, tap of the woman across from me as she tapped away on her phone. Even the crinkle of the napkin in my hand was amplified, and I felt like I was sitting inside an echo chamber, and that was with the noise canceling off. So I put it on the highest setting, expecting blissful peace. Instead, I heard a whisper. It was faint at first, almost drowned out by the roar of the espresso machine. But as I sat there listening to it, the voice got louder and clearer. It said, "You can't block me out." It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, like someone whispering directly into my ear and right next to me at the same time. I pulled the headphones off, startled, and looked around. There was no one there. The barista was behind the counter, and the only other customers were a young couple in the corner booth and a guy at the laptop across from me. He was wearing headphones of his own, but he wasn't talking. And the couple, well, they were too far away to be eavesdropping. Plus, they were arguing. "How are you going to do that?" The girl's voice was sharp. "You know how much I hate that." "We'll figure it out," the man said. His voice was lower, more even. "Just trust me." That was weird. They didn't sound angry, just very determined. I put the headphones back on, cranked the volume up, and tried to listen for that voice again. All I heard was the muffled sounds of their conversation. Now that I focused on it, the voice was gone. Maybe it was just some crazy trick of my imagination. So I took a deep breath, tried to calm myself down, then ordered a triple espresso. The barista rang me up and handed me my receipt. "Table 4, she said. "Your order will be ready in just a minute." Table 4 was empty. No one had been sitting there when I arrived. I walked over and sat down. I was probably reading too much into things, I told myself. There's no way those headphones let in sound. I mean, I could feel the vibrations of the chairs on the floor, not to mention the fact that I could still hear the music playing inside the store. Then I heard the whisper again. "You can't block me out." This time it was right in my ear, right on top of the hiss of the headphones. It was coming from the chair next to me. No one was sitting in the chair next to me. I stood up and looked around, but no one was paying any attention to me. The barista was making my espresso. The couple was laughing about something the man had said. The laptop guy was fast asleep, his head resting on his folded arms. And that was when I saw it. Underneath the guy's chair, barely visible between the gap in the wall and the bottom of the cabinet, was a tiny sliver of light. As I stared at it, it seemed to grow larger and larger until finally I could make out the shape of a face. A small, pale face with large, dark eyes. It was peering at me from underneath the chair. Then it disappeared. Maybe I was sleep-deprived, I told myself. It was late. I hadn't slept much the night before. My son had woken up in the middle of the night screaming that there was a monster in his closet, and then my wife had taken the dog to the vet, and I ended up spending the rest of the night alone, watching him sleep, waiting for her to come home. In fact, maybe I should have stayed home, I thought. Or maybe I should go to the hospital and get checked for hearing loss. Because the voice was back, and now it wasn't just saying you can't block me out. It was actually talking to me. "What are you doing?" it whispered. I jumped. "Who's there?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. A smile spread across the face that was peeking out from under the chair. "I'm right here," it whispered. "Right here beside you." It scrambled out from under the chair, revealing a scrawny little kid wearing a stained t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants. "Can I help you?" I asked. He nodded eagerly. "Do you want to hear the voice? It's really loud in here." He cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "La la 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 la." Ah. I sighed. Of course the voice was coming from him. It was the reason I was hearing everything. But how? How was he getting inside my headphones? The boy's smile faded. "What's wrong?" he asked. I shrugged. "Nothing. It's just, these headphones are supposed to block out noise. They're supposed to be completely silent." He tilted his head. "Are they?" He took a step closer. "They sound really loud in here." His head was now right next to mine, and I could feel the vibrations of his voice in my bones. "You can't block me out," he whispered. I took a step back, surprised. Hadn't he just been under the chair? How did he get here so fast? He grinned. "Want to see something cool?" he asked. Before I could answer, he reached under the table and pulled out a length of wire. One end was plugged into the headphone jack of my headphones, the other into a small amplifier hidden under his shirt. "I found this lying around," he said. "I think it's yours." I pulled the headphones off my head, and sure enough, the cord was wrapped around them, but that didn't make sense. If he was just plugging his amplifier into my headphones, wouldn't it just be playing the sound from whatever was near him? Why did it sound like he was whispering directly into my ear? The boy shrugged. "Here, plug them back in and listen." As soon as they were on, the first thing I heard was a loud pop in both ears, and then I heard my own voice. It was coming from the headphones, but it wasn't my current voice. It was my voice from 5 years ago, younger, higher-pitched, full of life. And then the voice started speaking. It was my voice, but not my current voice. It was a version of me that I hadn't thought about in years. "This isn't good," the voice said. "Not good at all. Shouldn't have plugged these in. You don't want to hear what's in here." "Why not?" I asked. "What's wrong with them?" The voice hesitated. "You wouldn't understand," it said. "You're not ready." "Yes, I am," I said. The boy tugged on my sleeve. "What does it say?" I frowned. "It doesn't want me to hear it." Reached out and touched the headphones. His fingers glowed an eerie green. "Don't listen to it," he whispered. "It's dangerous." But it was too late. The voice had already started whispering directly into my brain. I fell to my knees as images flashed through my mind. Images of me as a child, hiding under my bed, pulling the blankets over my head, trying to block out the world. The last thing I heard before I blacked out was the boy's voice. "You can't block me out," it whispered. "Can't block me out." I had no idea how to write this story, because it was the first one I've ever written, and I didn't know what to do. So I sat down with my therapist, and I was like, "Hey, can you help me write a story?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." So he asked me some questions. He said, "Okay, well, what happened?" I told him everything that happened. And then he stopped me. He said, "Okay, why don't we start at the beginning of the story? When did all of this begin?" And I said, "Well, let's see. It started with the clock. It kept resetting itself to 3:33 a.m. every morning. My microwave, my phone, my TV, even my analog wall clock would reset themselves to 3:33 a.m. every morning. So it was always at 3:33 a.m. when I woke up." He said, "Okay, so the clock is a red herring. Let's just ignore the clock and go from there." I said, "Well, then I started noticing other things happening. Like I would walk into a room and my bed would be unmade. But then I would remember making it in the morning before I went to work, so that was weird. And then sometimes I would come home and my front door would be unlocked, but I never locked it in the morning when I left for work. And then sometimes my cabinets would be open. Sometimes I would find muddy footprints on my hardwood floor leading to my front door, but I have no idea where they were coming from. And then sometimes I would wake up and I would be outside my house with no pants on. But the weirdest part was I have security cameras set up around my house, but the footage would always be corrupted. So there are these gaps in my memory, or these missing memories. And that's the story, he said. Okay, great. Got your story. Now let's focus on the plot. I said, what do you mean? The plot is the story. And he said, no. The plot is what is driving the story forward. What is the purpose of the story? Are you trying to say something about yourself? Are you trying to say something about the world? Are you trying to make the reader feel something? I thought about it and I said, well, I guess I want to say something about myself. I guess I want to show how broken I am, how damaged I am. And he said, that's interesting. But the story doesn't show that. You tell us that you're broken, but you never show us. So let's go back to the beginning of the story, and instead of telling the reader that you re-broken, show the reader that you're broken. Let's make the reader feel like you feel. Let's make them experience what you experienced. I spent months rewriting this story, trying to make it as real as possible, trying to make it as immersive as possible. I wanted the reader to feel like they were right there with me experiencing everything that I experienced. So I added more detail, more sensory detail. I tried to bring the reader into my head and show them my thoughts, my feelings. I tried to make the reader feel what I felt, to see what I saw, to hear what I heard. And that's when I realized something really important about writing, about storytelling. You don't want to tell the reader what to think or how to feel. You want to show the reader what to think and how to feel. You want to make the reader earn their understanding of the story. You want to make the reader work for their understanding of the story. And that's what makes a story great. When the reader comes away from the story feeling like they understand it, but they really don't, they might think they do, but they don't really do. And that's what this story is about, is the difference between telling and showing. Between telling the reader what to think and making the reader work for their understanding of the story. So here's the story again, except this time I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm just going to show you. The first thing I noticed was the clock. It was always at 3:33 a.m. My microwave, my phone, my TV, even my old-ass analog wall clock, they were always at 3:33 a.m. At first, it was just an annoyance, but then it became something that was really disturbing. Like, why were they always at 3:33 a.m.? Why were they always resetting themselves to 3:33 a.m.? Was someone messing with me? Was someone breaking into my house and messing with my clocks? Or was it something more sinister, something more psychological? Like, was this all in my head? Had I lost my mind? I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. So I decided to stay up one night and find out what was going on. I turned off my alarm and I stayed up. Sure enough, at 3:32 a.m., I started feeling sleepy. At 3:33 a.m., I blacked out. The next thing I knew, I was standing outside my house with no pants on. When I tell this story, people always ask me, why did you stay up? Why didn't you just go to bed? But they don't understand. I couldn't sleep. I needed to know what was going on. And besides, what was the worst that could happen? Well, turns out the worst thing that could happen actually did happen. Because when I woke up, I was outside my house with no pants on and muddy footprints leading back in. Someone had broken in while I was asleep, and they had messed with my clocks. But that wasn't the weirdest part. The weirdest part was those footprints were mine. They were my footprints. How did I get outside? How did I get muddy? How did I get back inside? And that's the scariest part. I don't know. That's the thing that keeps me up at night. That's the thing that haunts me to this day. Those footprints, they still haunt me. They remind me of what I don't know. They remind me of what I can't remember. They remind me of who I am. I found out that I have sleepwalking, which explains why I have no memory of any of this. But it doesn't explain those footprints. It doesn't explain the broken cabinets. It doesn't explain the door that's always unlocked. It doesn't explain the gaps in my memory. It doesn't explain the missing time. It doesn't explain who I am, and that's what this story is about. It's about the things that we can't explain, the things that we can't remember, the things that we don't know. It's about the gaps in our memory, the missing pieces of our past. It's about the things that make us who we are, the things that make us human. You.